Good morning, everybody. I apologize. I had a little bit of some technical difficulties, so I do apologize for getting a start that was a few minutes behind schedule. I'm going to give everybody an opportunity to get logged in here. I see the numbers going up from everybody joining. Welcome and good morning. As you're beginning to log in, you'll notice that I actually have no live video today. That is one of the issues that I was having when trying to get today's webinar up and running. And I finally decided just to forego the live video, and you can see me as I speak from the picture or just hear my voice. So I'll definitely work on getting that fixed before next week's webinar. Not sure what happened, but just happy to be with you all this morning. So again, we'll give it just about another minute because I see the numbers continuing to go up, and I want to give everybody an opportunity to get logged in. All right, so I think we are all here, or at least most of us. I'm sure many other people will be logging in and joining us as we continue. But first of all, welcome. It's great to have everybody join us again. I'm blown away week to week with the high number of participants who continue to join us for these weekly webinars. Hopefully you're getting quite a bit out of it. You know, obviously I'm thinking you are, or we wouldn't have such phenomenal return numbers from week to week. For those of you who are brand new, welcome. And for those of you who are returning, thanks for taking time out of your week to join us again. So just a few things, as I always do. I wanted to just cover what you can expect from our time together today. We're going to do a kickoff and welcome by Aaron Phillips, and then we're going to delve into a programming announcement that I'd like to share with you. And then after that, we're going to get straight into the results of our Ask HR webinar online survey. I'm really excited to share those results with you. Then we're going to delve into some compliance updates. And after that, we're going to go to part 2 of what will probably be a 3 or 4 part series that has to do with adjusting your people management practices for the new normal. And the 2 areas we're going to be focusing upon today, area number 1, what your employees want to know from you, and area number 2, benefit considerations that we are advising you to be mindful of. And then we'll be spending the last 15 minutes with some live Q&A. Why don't I actually kick it over to Aaron to do the official welcome. And Aaron, you, my friend, are unmuted, so you should be able to talk.
Good morning, Elizabeth, and good morning, everyone on the call. Thank you for being here this morning with us. Again, Elizabeth, thanks so much for putting this together. You know, I mean, we're consistently getting, 80 plus people participating. And so thank you for providing this, knowledge to, to everyone. And thank you all for participating. We're really glad to have you here. I think the piece that it's exciting to me as we prepared for, as you and I discussed today, is this online survey and what that's about and what that's telling us. And so we're excited to, first of all, we're thankful everyone that participated in the survey, because it gives us, data to help share with you, and we're excited to be able to share it. But we're very thankful that you took time to participate in that. The other is that, the people management practices, we talk about the new normal, and I think that's what this is all about, trying to recognize that we will not be back to what it was. Our employees are experiencing and have experienced something that many companies weren't willing to do for a long time, and that's working remotely. And so what does that do? Our employees, there's people that are genuinely concerned and scared of, this, whether they have a situation at their home, someone they live with that has an immunocompetent, issue, and or they themselves. And so this new normal, and that's what we're excited to cover today, and talk about, because that we will not be going back to what it once was. People have experienced something different, and they are, I think, going to expect it. So Elizabeth, thanks so much. Looking forward to learning today with you and everyone else.
Yes, thank you so much. And I should tell everybody, please forgive me, but speaking of the new normal that Aaron just referenced and all of us having to work remotely, we are actually having some work done at our home, and our dogs are locked up in their kennels down in the basement. And although I'm upstairs, you may be able to hear them barking in the background. So forgive me, but again, I guess that is just indicative of the new normal that Aaron was talking about. So thank you for your patience as it relates to that. All right. So a couple things, just some general announcements for those of you who are new with us. I wanted to explain to you how this works. And the way it'll work is we will cover some prepared material on the front end. And then afterwards, we will open it up so that you can ask us any HR related question that you might have. I always like to say at the beginning of every single webinar, by no means am I or Aaron, we are not attorneys, all right? We are also not medical professionals. What we are, however, is, we are both human resource professionals. And as you can see on the screen in front of you, this gives you a very quick little glimpse as to our background and areas of expertise. So please know that all of the information and recommendations and best practices we are providing for you to consider are coming from the perspective of human resource executives who've worked in various industries and who've dedicated each of us a little more than 20 years to our career. However, if you do have something very specific to your organization that would cross over into the, cross the boundaries of really being formal legal advice or medical advice related to COVID-19, we definitely would highly encourage you to confer with a, qualified attorney or medical professional to do that. And speaking of which, one thing I wanted to tell you as it relates to the weekly programming announcement is something that we have done in direct response to what you have asked of us. We maintain regular communication week to week with many of you who participate in our Ask HR webinars. And for some of you who may not realize, we have a large number of weekly webinar participants who join us from New York State, in addition to a very large number who join us from Pennsylvania. Now, we also do have participants coming from Ohio, from Illinois, and I don't want to overlook that. But the reason I'm mentioning this is because we are excited to say that every other week, beginning next week, so on Friday, May 22nd, we're going to feature a full 30 minutes of live Q&A with attorneys. Now, we have done that a couple of times with attorney Mark Kuhar from Pennsylvania, from a Pennsylvania law firm based out of Erie, Knox, McLaughlin, Gornell, and Sennett. But I wanted to introduce you to the attorney that we have become partners with from New York State. This is Amanda Lowe, and Amanda is based out of the Buffalo, New York region, but also has an office here in the Chautauqua County region, and she is a partner with Phillips Lytle. As you can see, she practices primarily in the area of labor and employment, and I've listed right in front of you, you can see on the slide, all the different specific areas that she focuses on. I did just notice that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The fifth bullet point down, it says employment litigation, and then that I next to it should actually be on the line below that. So I do apologize for that typo. And that would be for I-9 compliance and enforcement. But we're really excited. Amanda's really excited. And she is certainly an excellent resource that we are excited to introduce you to. And both she and Mark will be live for the Ask, for the Q&A portion of those bi-weekly webinars. And whenever a question is asked, we will now benefit from hearing the perspective of the Pennsylvania attorney for Pennsylvania employers, and then the New York State attorney for New York State employers. So really excited to tell you about that. All right, so moving right along, really excited to share with you the survey results from the Ask HR survey. Now, for those of you who participated, thank you. I was blown away, honestly, with the number of participants, especially based on how much you all have going on and just a quick turnaround time. So we really, really appreciate the time you took to fill out that survey. And what we're doing with that information is using it to really understand the impact of COVID-19, specifically on employers in this part of our country in comparison to what we have studied to be the national employer impact. Additionally, for those of you who participated, you recall, of course, that there was also a question at the very end where we asked you to share with us some specific topics of interest that you were interested in having included for our future Ask HR webinars. So definitely I will be paying attention to that and shaping our continued programming around your feedback. But now let's get to the results. All right, so first of all, we had a total of 41 survey respondents. The survey itself only took about 4 minutes to complete, and it was primarily comprised of a series of yes, no questions, all right, to various statements. Basically, stating if you agree or disagree as far as how it relates to your organization. We also did collect some demographical information as well, just so we would know what types of industries were being represented in this feedback, as well as the sizes of the organizations. As you can see here, the majority of respondents represented manufacturing at 29%, followed by nonprofit at 20%. 15% of you were from professional services, 10% from healthcare, and hey, maybe I should play the lottery, 777, lucky 7. That's my lucky number. But 7% equally from retail, hospitality, education, transportation, and warehousing, followed by 5% of respondents who represented the construction industry. I really liked the distribution of size of organization as well. And 32% of you who responded had anywhere from 1 to 20 employees. 24% of you who responded had anywhere from 21 to 50 employees. And 22%, 51 to 100, 9%, 101 to 250, 9%, 251 to 500, and 4% of you 501 to 1,000 employees. We did not have any respondents with an organization larger in size than 1,000 employees. So I just like to show you that so you can keep in mind, hey, we had a really nice representation of not only industries, but also in size of organization. So as you think about that, let's take a look at what the data showed us. So it shows you a comparison, of course, of national responses compared to regional. And I just want to explain the color coding you'll see. If you see green color coding, that indicates that here in our region, based upon those of you who responded to our survey, we are better than the national averages. If you see red, that means that we were lower. We were worse national averages. And again, I probably should just tell you that the national averages were derived from an April survey conducted by the Society of Human Resource Management, in which over 2,200 employers representing multiple industries and sizes were surveyed. So let's take a look at the first area. 71% of employers nationally are struggling to adjust to remote work. Now, regionally, only 30% of employers agreed with that statement. So we were better than the national average in that area. Nationally, 65% of employers said that maintaining employee morale has been a challenge. And again, we are a little bit better in that area, but still over half of you agreed that maintaining employee morale has been a challenge. Nationally, 40% of the employers said that they are facing difficulties with company culture. We were significantly higher in that area at 69%. So 69% of those of you who participated in this survey stated that you are facing difficulties with company culture. 42% nationally said that they're facing difficulties with productivity of their employees, and 54% of you regionally agreed with the same. So again, we were a bit higher in that area. We were almost 20% higher than the national average in the next category, which has to do with having troubles staying on top of and staying compliant with all of the changing governmental regulations. So 61% of you agreed to that. 53% of you stated that you're having difficulties nationally with shifting communication to meet the needs of their remote workforce, whereas 61% of those locally indicated the same. Erin, I'm actually going to unmute you because what I would love is for you and I to just have a little bit of quick dialogue for everyone to benefit from. And just, you know, let's talk a little bit about why there might be such dramatic changes and differences, I should say, nationally compared to regionally. Erin, do you have any thoughts? I know I certainly have some thoughts, and I know I'm, in fairness to Erin, I'm hitting him cold with this. But Erin, is there anything that jumps out at you from this particular slide? We do have more data on the next slide to share, but on this slide, is there anything profound that really jumps out at you?
You know, Elizabeth, I wonder, you know, on the 30% of employers are struggling adjusting to remote work, I wonder if any of that locally, why we're better than the national average is a lot of the, you know, 29% of the respondents were manufacturing. Many of our manufacturing clients have a lot of their staff back now. And so, you know, and many of them were deemed essential and kept quite a bit of the team in place. And so I wonder, you know, does that, you know, could that skew us in a positive way there? Whereas nationally, you know, employers are facing it different. I don't know. What are your thoughts there?
Sorry about that. I muted you while you were talking, or I muted myself rather while you were talking. I would agree. I think that definitely could be part of it. And another thing that I was thinking is because maybe, you know, something that jumped out at me, to be honest with you, is the questions where we were significantly worse. And what I'm wondering is the fact that perhaps with the national organizations, I'm wondering if many of them were much larger and had dedicated, you know, human resource professionals on staff, or even, you know, corporate attorneys on staff who could help them to navigate some of those areas. Whereas obviously regionally, as you just saw from the previous slide, we represent a smaller size of employer. So many of you who are on this call, for example, and many of you who responded to the survey, you don't have that. So you're trying to fly kind of blind and relying upon, you know, the well-intended people on your team who don't have that expertise or background, who are just doing their best to figure it out as they go. I don't know. What do you think about that, Erin?
That could be absolutely, but you know, another piece that stuck in my mind is I'm surprised that nationally 40% of employers are saying they're finding difficulties with their company culture. You know, this this has created drastic shifts in how employees are feeling, how companies are reacting. And so for us to be at 69%, I don't think that's too far off, you know. And I was a bit surprised that nationally companies are saying that only 40% are struggling with difficulties on company culture. You know, the productivity, 54% of employers, you know, are facing difficulties with productivity. That's not again, not a surprise. What we're dealing with is, you know, many of your workers on the call have children at home. And so what does that mean? Well, they're all going to school from home. So what, you know, so our employees are now teachers, they're employees, they're spouses, and, you know, caregivers. And so people are feeling pulled in all these different directions. And because of that, that has created, you know, I mean, you know, it's 42% are nationally are dealing with productivity issues. I don't know. I think that's a little low as well. I think with the challenges that each of the people on this call are facing with becoming, the teacher, becoming the, the caregivers on a 24/7 basis is real. And so I think I was a little surprised that nationally was that low in a couple of those areas. I think it was, and it doesn't surprise me that we're a bit high in those. Just some thoughts.
Right. No, agreed. And let me just add one other role on top of that. And for those of you on this call who are juggling dual roles like I am with young children at home, while also putting in probably more hours than before COVID-19 for sure, I'm also a chef, right? Taking lots of breaks throughout the day to cook meals and prepare snacks and God knows what else for the kids. So yeah, definitely wearing a lot of hats and juggling a lot of balls at once. All right. Aaron, I'm going to keep you unmuted so we can have the same type of dialogue for the benefit of everybody after we go to our next slide, okay?
Yep, thank you.
All right, so the next slide. Nationally, 40% of employers have shut down certain aspects of their business, whereas regionally, 56% of employers had to do the same. Nationally, 83% of employers have had to adjust business practices, whereas regionally, almost 100% of you, wow, 98% have had to do the same. And as we look at the business practices that had to be adjusted, let's break it down. So, half are no longer hiring nationally, whereas 66% of our respondents said the same. 31% nationally have had to lay off or furlough workers, whereas our area, from those who responded, 44% said the same. We were almost exactly the same to the national average of 15% for permanently cutting headcount, but just slightly higher at 17%. 38% nationally have had to cut employee hours. 49% regionally have had to do the same. 19% have had to cut employee pay rates. Now, for this statistic, obviously, it's better to be lower, right? So, 10% regionally have had to cut pay rates based upon those of you who responded. 14% nationally hired more employees due to COVID-19, whereas 2% regionally have had to do the same. And the last, piece of data that I wanted to share, 32% nationally are offering additional paid leave benefits for their employees, whereas we are behind the mark for that at only 20% who are offering additional paid leave benefits for their employees. And again, when I asked that question, I specified for those of you who participated, that's above and beyond what the government is requiring. So Aaron, any reactions to these numbers?
You and I have talked to a lot of employers, and we have not heard the cut and pay. A couple here, and I truly believe the Paycheck Protection Program and some of the other governmental benefits have saved that. I think the number would be much higher if employers weren't able to have access to some of the funds that were provided, and the employee retention credits, things of that were available to employers. So that piece, the fact that we're, I think it would be a lot higher without some of those. 2% have hired more employees. I'm a little surprised with that, Elizabeth, because you and I do a significant amount of recruiting. Though some has stopped, though some has been paused, we're still having some, active searches. So I was a little surprised that only 2% have hired any employees, especially because of the industries that were on the call. I thought maybe it would be maybe a bit higher than that. I wasn't expecting, but I was thinking it would be maybe in that closer to the national averages. I don't know, your thoughts?
I would agree. It's, I know, Aaron, you and I have had a lot of conversation about recruiting during a time like this, during a global pandemic. And while the natural instinct for many very obvious reasons is to say, forget it, I'm not hiring anybody, in some ways, right? If you flip the coin and look at the other side, it might be a good time to hire, honestly, because there is obviously a large number of highly qualified candidates out there And I know you and I just saw that actually for a search we just did.
Yeah,
For one of our
absolutely. In
clients. Yeah.
2008, the large, the last recession, we had seen many of our clients were making strategic hires, and so what they were looking at it, and they were positioned well for the challenging economy, and they were saying, well, we wouldn't be able to maybe get this person, a year ago when the economy was strong and vibrant. But we still need them. We think it's a strategic hire, and we want to invest in that area. And so, 2008, we saw significant hiring for some of our clients for that exact reason, Elizabeth. They were making strategic hires of key executives or key leaders that they knew would position them well coming out of this. And so, that's one of the things that people look at, and one of the things that we like to talk to clients about is, how are you positioned to come out of this? And when we don't know, and one of that is the hiring. So I guess that one, it surprised me that we were behind in that.
Yeah. And, another thing to consider too, when it comes to recruitment, because listen, for a lot of you on this call right now with us this morning, it might make zero sense for you to hire anybody else. Okay. But for some, it might make sense, because think about key strategic positions that could ultimately end up saving you money if you have that additional expertise on hand to help save money and help really, maximize resources in some respective areas. All right, so that's what I wanted to share as it relates to the data. For those of you who for those of you who have registered for today's webinar, I'm also going to be sending a comprehensive overview of how you responded for all of the questions we included. I just wanted to cover some of the highlights that were more relevant to what we were talking about today. All right, so now what I'd like to do is I'm going to unmute Mark Kuhar, who again is the attorney that many of you know and love from the Erie, Pennsylvania area. And he's agreed just to say a few words about some compliance related updates that might be of interest to you to keep on your radar. And Mark, can you hear me, Mark?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I'm going to mute myself because of my lovely barking dogs in the background so that it doesn't disrupt what you're saying.
Okay, great, thanks. Hello, everybody. I'll try to be efficient as usual with the time. In fact, just a few minutes. I just wanted to update on things that have been very present in the discussions I've been having with clients this week since we spoke last. And very briefly, first, for the PPP borrowers out there, you may already know this, but in case you don't, the deadline for deciding to return the money rather than use it has been extended until May 18th. And a very, very helpful revision to the SBA's FAQs came out actually officially on the 14th. So FAQ 46, SBA FAQ 46 is the one that's everybody's talking about. And in case anyone is not aware of that, it basically says it would be extremely, extremely unlikely for the SBA/IRS to conclude that PPP loans below $2 million were not supported by adequate necessity. That was the buzz, especially the buzz leading up to May 7th, which was the initial safe harbor turn back the money deadline that a lot of people were nervous about, because then FAQs 37 and 31 gave people reason to be nervous. They seem to be adopting sort of a liquidity test. You could only get the loan if you had liquidity issues, and that largely has been washed out of the FAQs. And again, with respect to PPP loans under 2 million, recently issued SBA FAQ 46 is giving employers a lot of comfort, and the stress and anxiety is going down. Also, they de-emphasize the criminal prosecution that would result from their conclusions that adequate necessity had not been demonstrated, that were highly present in their original FAQs 37 and 31. So again, PPP borrowers, take a look at 46 and know that the deadline for turning the money back was extended until Monday the 18th. Kind of in line with something that was said that both Elizabeth and Aaron contributed to, I think there's I think a lot of people are separating themselves, organizations are separating themselves from the pack or not at this point. I had a very astute business owner and client and friend of mine who basically said, what you're seeing is organizations and companies that are engaging the risk and managing the risk, and others that are hiding from the risk. And he predicted that, frankly, it would be basically a volcano on the timeline of businesses in terms of natural selection. I'm using a dinosaur metaphor there. In other words, what he's saying is that those who limit themselves, and don't think I'm talking to you or you or you, I'm just saying generally, those organizations and especially the for-profit companies who are just trying to hunker down and hide from the risk are likely going to be the ones who don't adapt, and frankly who may not survive. And I don't mean to say that lightly at all, but so it's not the time for. I mean, all of us hid from risk, including me, for a few weeks, and I just tried to do the best that I could to help employers as they called. But very shortly after that, it went into full tilt, and it has been since. And the reason I say that at this point is because I still have a sense that many of my clients and others who I just watch from afar are not engaging some of these federal supports in the positive ways that they can be engaged. Everyone's talking about PPPs. No one's talking about the alternatives to that, by the way, which are the employee retention tax credits. But I wanted everybody to remember that those are out there if you did not get a PPP loan. But in any event, what I'm talking about is the unemployment supports and the FFCRA leaves. I still have, I'm still running into some people, organizations that are saying essentially we're post PPP, or we're about to become post PPP 8-week period. And again, I hope people are with me there. But basically, we're through or almost through the 8-week period for for having the PPP money to subsidize our employees' payroll. That we really don't need them all. We don't need them all the time, but we want to keep them. The PPP helped us. What are we going to do? And as an example, if in fact you only have the half of the work for your employees to do that they otherwise you would have them doing, what if companies were to lay people off 50%? And I'm speaking definitely about Pennsylvania law here, but if you had, let's say you had, just as an example, receptionist who would be very unlikely to be fully utilized at this point in most businesses, and you're wanting to retain him best you could, so you're keeping his pay up, but PPP money's out. Have you thought about cutting him to half-time? Then he goes from $600 a week down to $300 a week, but then he gets $100 and some dollars of unemployment plus $600 of federal unemployment. So your payroll costs have halved, and this person's personal income has gone up. So again, this is what I'm talking about, and I know I speak for DA and certainly myself when we say definitely follow the rules. But there are opportunities to leverage off these supports. That's what they're there for, in my opinion. And I still think some employers are, I'm glad that we figured it out. We're complying, but in terms of using these as tools, I'd like to see more of that, and I'm trying to help people see more of that. Similarly, although a little bit more difficult to apply, is the availability of the FFCRA leave. So, not only have you hopefully emailed or posted, or both the posting that makes it known to people that these are available to them, there's nothing that prevents you from actually essentially making sure, I want to come shy of saying promoting, but making sure that people know how open you are to this. Hey, are you able to provide childcare for your children? If you're unable to do so, and you have children at home who you don't think should be at home by themselves or what have you, if you want to take some of this emergency sick leave or the COVID FMLA leave for a day a week or 2 days a week, I mean, it would allow you to maintain their payroll high, and frankly, in a way that satisfies your PPP forgivability targets. But at the same time, you end up getting a tax credit if it's a real, a legitimate application of the leave, and you've documented it per IRS 44, FAQ 44, you have an opportunity basically to take advantage of that support that, in my opinion, was put out there for the benefit of the employees and their employers. Elizabeth, hopefully that's not too long, but those are kind of some of the hot issues and thoughts that I've had this week.
No, you were perfect, actually. Thank you so much. I know that you are a very, you know, much appreciated and highly regarded contributor to these sessions. So thank you so much. I know people always love to hear from you.
Thank you.
All right, so now let's move on to the prepared topic component. And this is part 2, like I said, of what will essentially be a 3, possibly 4-part series that we cover about how to adjust your people management practices for the new normal. And the first one that I want to cover with you today has to do with what it is your employees want to know from you, all right? And where am I getting this information from? I'm getting this information from multiple conversations that I've been having with employees and employers, asking and just trying to listen and learn as to what is on their mind, okay? And I'm talking to people from all different types of industries, all different types of work arrangements that are being experienced right now, and also a multitude of employees and employers from both Pennsylvania and New York State, as well as some from Indiana. And here's what I want to share with you. First of all, you know, and I know Aaron would agree, I know Mark would agree, and all of us touched upon it already, but it is extremely important for everyone on this webinar to continue to take proactive steps, not only to address the concerns that their employees have, but to anticipate those concerns. And that's why this component that we're covering right now in these next few slides is going to be so important for you, because I'm attempting to anticipate what concerns your employees are going to have as it relates to COVID-19. And it's important to also understand that nobody's immune from needing to do this if they would like to come out the other end of this okay as an organization. So whether or not you're on this webinar right now and you're listening and you have people working remotely or you don't, it doesn't matter, because you know what? One thing every single one of you has in common, every single one of you, is that your employees are sharply tuned in to how you have responded to the pandemic every step of the way up until this point and beyond. So whether or not they state that to you, and by the way, probably more often than not, they're not going to state that to you, they are sharply in tune to what it is that you are doing and what you're not doing, to be honest. So what I wanted to, I guess, narrow this down to are 3 key areas of concern that we're recommending you focus upon for your employees, all right? And, you know, as I was putting this together, I was thinking of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And I'm sure everybody has heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And of course, what is it? Well, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is one that, you know, touches upon the very basic needs that every human being shares in order to feel safe, secure, and to ultimately reach their highest level of performance. So as I look at this, the 3 areas of concern that I'd like you to focus on, that we'd like to recommend you focus upon for your employees, is you're trying to take a proactive approach, all right? Safety, business viability, and work-life concerns. And let's break it down and look at each one. So for safety, again, just like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that is just above the, you know, the physiological needs that we share as human beings, safety needs. It's right there at the foundation. All of us want to know that we are safe. We want to feel safe. Your employees are no different. They want to know exactly what you're doing to keep them safe. So not only is it advisable, not only because the government is mandating it in many cases, but also because it's good business sense and just good sense as a human being, to make the right adjustments to your business practices, right, to keep them safe. It's also crucial to openly communicate these, not only to your employees, but we're going to suggest to their families as well. And I'm taking that cue from what the educational systems are doing, right? They're not only communicating to the students about the changes and adjustments that are being made, but they're also communicating to the families. And I think that's an excellent model to follow, right? So, when we talk about adjustments, well, adjustments as it relates to your operations, improvements as it relates to hygiene and sanitation, updates as it relates to your wellness initiatives. So here's what I mean by that. So these are just some examples for you to consider. There are many more beyond this, but this is hopefully just planting a seed to get your minds working. Operational adjustments, right? That could involve screening employees or visitors. That could involve making sure your employees' workstations are spaced out appropriately. It could include making sure that you're rotating the different shifts that you have, or even how you have people clocking in at the beginning and end of each shift, clocking in, clocking out, so that you don't have a lot of people building up in one specific area at a given time. So those are just some of what could be many different examples of operational adjustments. The next area, like I said, sanitation and hygiene. A lot of you have done this, but take a look at the number of stations you have throughout your work facility where hand sanitizer is available. Increase that number. Of course, now, obviously, both in New York and the other states, such as Pennsylvania, that we're serving on this webinar call, masks are being required, of course. But even after that point, continue to provide masks for employees and customers to wear. I don't mean forever, 20 years from now, keep doing that. But again, think about the fact that your employees, your customers, they want to feel safe. So what can they visibly see that you are doing to ensure their safety? And, of course, make sure you implement different procedures to make sure that common areas are more frequently cleaned and sanitized. One little nugget of information I heard yesterday, actually, from a session that I co-presented with Wei-Shin from Wei-Shin Lowe, is that a lot of organizations are using the same, for example, cloth or rag to sanitize and clean multiple surfaces. But one good practice that she had recommended, and I'll pass along to you because I learned something from her in this yesterday, is have each employee clean their own area, and that will actually dramatically improve how sanitized and truly clean and safe the workplace is, as opposed to assigning that task to one person who's using a rag or a cloth to go across multiple areas where multiple people work at various workstations. So I just thought that was helpful. Another thing too, over communicate what you're doing. Post the schedules, post the procedures in visible areas, and also, share it through email. As far as wellness initiatives, offer different micro-learning or lunch and learn sessions, of course, that are virtual, so you don't have multiple people gathered in one area. Focus on topics related to COVID-19. And consider even adding a pandemic protection page or a COVID-19 page to your intranet that provides updated key facts and guidance for your employees to follow. And again, it's so important. Remember, your employees' family members are very concerned about them and fearful for their safety when they're coming to work. And, think about putting together a newsletter and have it outline what is being done in your organization. Mail it to your employees' home, send it out electronically. So those are just some examples of what we're talking about to safety. So work-life concerns. So here are some examples to consider. Empathy training for leaders. Now, it's tough, right? And so many of us on this call are just overwhelmed, inundated with the stressors of trying to keep our doors open, right? And follow all of the guidance that we're supposed to be following, let alone having to also worry about being that empathetic ear for our employees. Let's face it, we're just as scared as they are, but yet we have to be the face of strength, right? That they turn to. So I think it's really important for you to consider looking for different ways that you can train your leaders and provide support for them to be able to provide that empathy. We're happy to talk with you about different options as it relates to that. Just hit me up separately outside of this. But that's something that we're going to recommend. We're also going to recommend continuing to look at your flexible work arrangements. How can you be even more flexible than you're already being? Be especially careful and mindful of those who might be at a high risk themselves health-wise, or maybe they're caregivers for someone who is. Maybe they have, people in their household who are working on the front lines, or maybe they're having troubles like Mark Kuhar stated about a lack of access to childcare for school-age children who obviously don't have school to go to. How can you be flexible? And mental health support. This is really, really important. If you don't have an EAP program, okay, employee assistance program, because it's just a benefit that you've never found overly necessary to provide, dear God, if there's ever been a good time to look into adding that service to your benefits package, it is now, okay? It's a very nominal fee that allows your employees to have access to a plethora of mental health and financial and legal and all different types of supportive services for free as a benefit for working with you. Think of how amazing that would be if you could roll that out to your employees, and how much more, support they would have, so that they could then in turn feel more safe and be more, productive for you. And also, if that's something for whatever reason you don't want to do, look at how you could cover the cost of counseling services for any employees who might request it. Another idea that we had are employee interest groups. So maybe you could consider surveying your employees, try to gather their interest in participating in almost like, I don't want to say a support group, because that's something you have to be careful throwing around if you're not a mental health professional facilitating a support group. So let's not call it that, but let's call it a special interest group, employee interest group, where employees can gather and they can connect with others and they can share their pandemic related experiences, both work related and otherwise. And, survey your employees, offer that as a way for them to connect and get support from each other, and find out from them who wants to do it and how they prefer to interact. What would that look like? Now we're going to shift gears, and we're going to look at some benefit considerations. And, gosh, again, I could go on and on about this as well. It's so hard to try to give you all enough information to really have it be useful, but also not go over our time, which we've tried to be really excellent at doing each week. So in the 10 minutes we have left, I'll spend about 5 minutes covering some benefit considerations, and perhaps some of you might have some questions, HR related, that you would like to ask. And Mark Kuhar is also still on the line. If you have a quick little compliance question or two, I'm guessing he might be able to answer it. So obviously, right, aside from all the other areas in which COVID-19 has raised concerns and questions for employees and employers, benefits is no exception. So the time to consider these questions is now, okay? And I chunked it out into a few different areas of benefit considerations. The first has to do with employer-provided health coverage. And I know some of you on this call are small enough that you don't offer employer-provided health coverage, but many of you do. And, FFCRA, which of course stands for Families First Coronavirus Response Act, that requires group health plans to cover COVID-19 screening without any cost sharing with the employee. I'm not sure, especially if you don't have someone whose sole focus on staff is nothing but HR, which of course would include benefits. I'm not sure if you necessarily knew that, but I want to make sure that everyone understands that your group health plans are required by federal law to cover screening for COVID-19 without any costs being incurred or passed on to the employee. Also, I want you to know that FFCRA, it does not, interestingly enough, require the group health plans to cover treatment without cost sharing. So it requires screening, but it doesn't require treatment. Any treatment costs that are related to someone who's covered under your plan who's been infected with COVID-19, the way it works is that it's allocated based on whatever the unique terms of your plan document or insurance contract are. So it's really important for you, either as a business owner, if you don't have someone else on hand to oversee and be expected to be the subject matter expert on all things benefits, somebody in your organization has to really understand the terms of your plan document and insurance contract so that you can give the appropriate guidance to your employees. In addition to that, HDHP stands for high deductible health plans. Any of you who offer that and have employees covered by it, your employees are going to remain eligible if they receive health benefits for testing and treatment without incurring expenses toward their deductible. So think of what peace of mind that would give your employees if you could explain that to them. Because a lot of them might be scared. Oh my gosh, what happens? That's just yet another concern that you could alleviate simply by educating yourself, considering what you need to explain to them now, as opposed to just taking it for granted. The other thing I wanted to make sure that everyone on this call understands is that, continuation of health coverage during furloughs, as well as mandated leave of absence, I want you to understand what that looks like. And this is coming straight from conversations I've had with employees who've been furloughed or laid off, as well as with employers who truly had no clue about what they are entitled to. So what I want you to know is that typically health benefits would not continue during an extended unpaid leave of absence. But also I want you to understand, but again, look at your unique summary plan description, okay? That's my little qualifying statement for everything I'm sharing with you. Most group health plans, what they do is they tie eligibility for coverage of your employees to your employees' full-time employment status. So it's really important to take a look at your insurance contracts and figure out how to treat your employees in regards to their eligibility due to the extended leave of absence that they may be taking that might be unpaid. However, if you choose to keep furloughed employees covered as active employees, which a lot of people do, then you're going to want to get with your healthcare benefit provider and amend your plan as necessary to make sure, right, that everything is captured. So again, make sure you look into that and you get that covered. As far as paid leave and continuation of short-term and long-term disability coverage, STD, LTD. STD stands for short-term disability. LTD stands for long-term disability. Make sure you review your programs and figure out whether or not your employees who, God forbid, contract COVID-19, figure out what benefits they're eligible to receive. You need to know that now before it happens. And again, another thing I learned from the session that I co-facilitated with Wei Shin-Lei yesterday is that, it's estimated that 1 in 4 of your employees, by the time this is all said and done, about 18 to 24 months from now, 1 in 4 of your employees will eventually contract COVID-19. So, one thing Wei Shin said was, listen, none of you are going to be immune from having at least one employee who's contracted COVID-19 by the time this is done. So please don't think just because I haven't yet, I won't. No. Figure out what programs, what your programs offer so that you can articulate to your employees what benefits they're paid for. And also too, some of your disability insurance policies might include a quarantine benefit rider. And if that happens, some benefits may be covered. So it's something for you to look into and consider. That's all I have in terms of the prepared portion. And it looks like we only have 3 minutes left. I think what I'll do, I'm going to unmute Mark and I'm going to unmute Aaron. Aaron, just give me one moment. Okay. And Mark and Aaron, is there anything else based upon what I have put together that you wanted to chime in and put the cherry on top of what we've already presented today for everyone to consider?
No, thank you.
Okay, excellent. Aaron, anything from you?
No, I agree. I think the piece that Mark and I even talked about this recently is, and you and I as well, is that employee assistance programs are so beneficial. And when you mentioned nominal, most employers can pick them up for, it's a per employee per month service. And I've seen contracts as low as a couple dollars per employee per month. So it's a great way, and I'm glad you mentioned that. And because you and I have talked about it, Mark and I have as well, that it's so important to have that access.
It definitely is. And it looks like we haven't had any questions entered into the Q&A portion or even in the live chat. So I'm going to take that as everybody getting the information that they hope to get. Everybody, please stay healthy, please stay safe, and continue to call, email, and either Aaron, Mark, or myself if there's anything whatsoever we can help you with. Thanks so much.